actor friends, I'm back. I'm very excited because today I'm doing something different, which is why I'm in a different space than usual. I am going to do a vlog style video for you where you're going to see me working on Imogen's Why I Must Die monologue. So I'm going to apply whatever acting processes I would normally apply to this kind of monologue to actually get it in my bones, to connect to it, to understand it more. I just did a video on it recently, breaking down all the line meanings. So if you haven't seen that and you're working on this monologue, please look at that video, which I'll link here and in the description. But this stuff that I'm doing here is also going to apply to any monologue that you're working on. So if you've watched one of my video breakdowns and you've gone, but that's very nice, Sarah, how do I actually apply this stuff? Hopefully these techniques will help you get there, especially if you're working on a high stakes, highly emotional, dramatic monologue, because that's what this monologue is. When I did the video breakdown for this monologue, I didn't really feel like I connected to it properly. I still feel like I haven't quite cracked it. So I'm actually going to go through this process completely organically. I have actually not planned the kind of exercises I'm going to do because I want to discover them on the spot and show you what happens when I organically explore, because I believe you should organically explore any monologue. What I'm saying is, don't get stuck in that analytical phase of your prep. This happens to actors sometimes. They either skimp on the prep of understanding all the little line meanings and the word meanings, and they just kind of go, I understand, I can feel it. That's not good either. Some people fall into the other camp, which is they get stuck on understanding every tiny little bit, but then they lose the connection. They don't know how to get it in their body and they get stuck in their head, and that becomes not truthful as well. So one of the things I struggled with this monologue is understanding how much does she really want to die? And you could dig into this, you could psychologize, philosophize about this, endlessly, because there's an element, I think, that she maybe thinks she wants to die because she feels maybe so betrayed and worthless in this moment, in seeing that the people that she cared about the most have ended up being total jerks and have both backstabbed her. So both Posthumus and Pisanio, who she trusted to get her through this difficult time, have just been like, nah. From what she sees, she's like, well, you're aligning yourself with Posthumus and you have betrayed me too. So she probably feels like there's nothing left for her, that she's not worth loving, I guess. I think that's useful to think about in terms of any character, because as humans, I think we have a tendency in those dark moments to think that we're not lovable. I think that's a common sort of human condition thing. So I think this is a moment of like, okay, am I worthless? Am I not lovable? Do I not deserve to be here? I don't think she genuinely wants to die though. So the other thing is that she's being really kind of snappy with Pisanio in some of these lines. So I'm actually going to look at this scene with you. So there's a bit where he says, oh, gracious lady, since I received command to do this business, I have not slept one wink. And she says, do it and to bed then. She's like, well, if you can't sleep, you poor thing, why don't you just stab me? And now you'll be able to sleep. So it's quite a snappy response. She's kind of sarcastic with him in a way, I think, in this scene, because she's angry at him too. I think it's really important not to get stuck in the kind of sad, self-pitying thing here. I think there's anger here. You've been betrayed. She's been betrayed here. And this guy is being like, oh, poor me. I haven't slept since you told me this. I didn't mean for this to happen. And she's like, well, just sort it out then, you poor thing. God, feeling sorry for yourself. Anger. So let's track her journey throughout this scene. She enters at the beginning of this scene. This is Act 3, Scene 4. And she's just got off her horse and cart, or whatever you want to imagine. She's got out of the car and she's come out and she's like, oh, is he nearby? Which I said in the video, it reminds me of Enchanted because it feels very like, where is my Edward? She's like, where is he? I'm so longing to see him. So, you don't want to make this stereotype here, but I think it's good to connect to that high energy level. She has a kind of innocent childishness in some ways, I think, about her. So imagine that Pisanio was like following her and it's like wringing his hands like, oh man, I've got to stab her now. Can I do this? And so he has decided, no, I'm going to give her this letter. And she can see in his face that it is not good. It's not good contents. And she's like, come on, give me a smile. Shouldn't everything be good now? And she says, speak, man, thy tongue may take off some extremity, which to read would be even mortal to me. So she's saying, if I read this and it is bad news, I think this would kill me. She is so on edge. So that's a clue there. All right. Then Pisanio says, please you read, and you shall find me, wretched man, a thing the most disdained of fortune. And so again, Pisanio is kind of asking her to take pity on him, which is, you know, a way to try to keep in her good books, but it's actually quite selfish. Again, I think that's another thing that can fuel your kind of anger at the situation. Okay, so I'm actually going to read the letter that he gives her now, this next section. And I am going to do a little bit of an exercise where I'm going to try and drop into certain words. When I say drop in, if you've never heard that sort of thing before, it's kind of where you say words and you're connecting. You sort of feel it in your gut, feel it in your heart, in your body. So you should know when it feels connected. And if you don't, that's something that you definitely just need to keep exploring and playing with. There might be a point where you go past it even. Sometimes you say it a few times and you go, nope, that was it back there, and I'm just going to move on. So make it playful, be curious about the process. Don't be looking for an ultimate point. It's just a journey to help you kind of explore how she might be feeling. It's not a right or wrong thing. Thy mistress, Pisanio, hath played the strumpet in my bed. Hath played the strumpet in my bed. Hath played the strumpet. Strumpet. Strumpet in my bed. The testimonies whereof lie bleeding in me. Lie bleeding in me. The testimonies whereof lie bleeding in me. I speak not out of weak surmises. Weak surmises. Weak. I speak not out of weak surmises, but from proof. Proof. But from proof. Proof as strong as my grief. Proof as strong as my grief. And as certain as I expect my revenge. As certain as I expect my revenge. 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 That part, thou, Pisanio, must act for me. Thou, Pisanio, must act for me if thy faith be not tainted with the breach of hers. Let thine own hands take away her life. Let thine own hands take away her life. Take away her life. Let thine own hands take away her life. I'll stop there, there's more, but you know, that will be a lot for you guys to watch. So I encourage you to play with that sort of thing. So you can play with that with the monologue that you are actually working on, but you also can play with it with the surrounding text. So even if it's short dialogue, drop into the words. Okay, so the next section, false to his bed. She's reeling. She's reeling in this. Now, this could be done as quite a reflective thing, or it could be done as quite a dynamic thing where she throws it back in Pisanio's face, you know, and there's a spectrum. You could do it lots of different ways. So there are two exercises that you can do to kind of play with those opportunities. I'm going to do a very, very reflective one. I'm going to actually just whisper it, well, kind of murmur it to myself and keep it very internalized. So that's why I'm kind of up in your grill here. And then I'm going to do the second exercise is that I'm going to do it as a really powerful throw back in Pisanio's face. And I'm going to pick a point across the room, quite far across the room, that I'm going to throw it to. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So let's start with the reflective one. Now, in this reflective one, I'm actually going to repeat the words again like I did before, because this can help you drop in. All right, here we go. So reflecting. False to his bed. False to his bed. What is it to be false? To lie and watch there and to think on him? To weep twixt clock and a clock? If sleep charge nature, to break it with a fearful dream on him and cry myself awake. It's false to his bed, is it? So that's not rubbish. So this is the thing that you need to know. It doesn't always feel good. So I'm going to try it again. I'm going to really whisper it and see what happens, and try and keep it as small as possible. Like, I don't want anyone to know. False to his bed. What is it to be false? To lie and watch there, to think on it, to weep twixt clock and clock. If sleep charged nature, to break it with a fearful dream of him and cry myself awake. That's false to his bed, is it? So it doesn't feel good. It's not working for me. So that makes me think, okay, she's probably snapping at Bassanio. So let's try the other option. Again, all of this stuff you can use with your monologue or with the stuff around the monologue. I'm using sections around the monologue because it's an enormous scene where she's basically doing monologue after monologue. So that works in this case, but it doesn't always. Right, let's get up. Right, before I jump into this, what I want to talk about is Shakespearean staging and Shakespearean acting. On the Shakespearean stage, they were in the round. So the audience was all around them. So they're often playing kind of diagonally across the stage, or at least this is a common practice in Shakespearean performance these days. So they're open to the audience. And what is interesting usually on the stage is having characters far away rather than close. We are used to, in kind of modern theatre and definitely in screen, having people super duper close to us. On stage, and particularly in Shakespeare, that is not interesting. So if you're used to working with someone like on the other side of a camera, this is something that you might want to explore, is actually give yourself way more space. And even if you are taping something, imagine that the person is like on the other side of the room, because it will change the way you act. It will change the way you deliver things. So it's important. This is actually important in shaping what you do. You got to take up space. So here we go. False to his bed. What is it to be false? To lie and watch there and to think on him. To weep twixt clock and clock. If sleep charged nature, to break it with a fearful dream of him and cry myself awake. That's false to his bed, is it? Now, as you know, I think my acting could be better there, but it certainly felt more appropriate, and particularly notice the kind of consonants that Shakespeare has given her here. False, and they're very spitty. False, bed, what is it? To be false. They're hard consonants, which often means that the character is, leaning into those and giving it some fire. So this next section is massive. She is really kind of going off the rails. Bassanio responds to her after she says this next bit and says, "Good madam, hear me," which suggests that she's basically gone bonkers, and she's sort of like, railing at the clouds. "Oh, Posthumus, how could you do this to me?" That is tricky to access. That is hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with some different big gestures to help it kind of get into my body. I was taught this as playing shape, and it's kind of the same idea as behind a power pose, where if you put yourself in a particular position, you're going to feel a certain way, and people do that, to make themselves feel better, but you can also do it in your acting to make yourself feel worse. Ta-da! Thank you, science. So I'm going to try and find, as I speak each line, a pose that feels appropriate to me. Now, they need to be big. I call it a full body gesture, which means if I've decided it's this, I'm not just going to hold my hand up like this. I'm going to scoop into it. I'm going to bend my legs. I'm going to connect to my core. I'm going to use my back. Okay, that stuff is important. So you're actually accessing body, breath, everything. Now, it will feel weird. It's not something that you're going to do on stage. It's something that's going to be a process, an exercise to help you connect. The other thing I want to warn you about before we begin this is it's going to look like bad acting, and that is okay. It's supposed to. So if you're looking at it and be like, "Oh my gosh, that's not achieving what she thinks is achieving." No, I'm not trying to make it look good. I'm trying to discover what works for Imogen and what works in this part of the monologue. If it doesn't feel right, that's information for me, and I just go, "Oh, okay, that doesn't feel right. I'll just try something else." So let's have a go at it, and you might actually see me go back and try something else. Here we go. "I false, thy conscience witness, Jacobo, thou didst accuse him of incontinency. Thou then looked like a villain. Now methinks thy favour's good enough. Some jay of Italy, whose mother was her painting, hath betrayed him. Poor I am stale, a garment out of fashion. Poor I am stale, a garment out of fashion, and for I am richer than to hang by the walls. I must be ripped to pieces with me. I must be ripped to pieces. I must be ripped to pieces with me. Oh, men's vows. Ah, men's vows are women's traitors. Men's vows. Men's vows are women's traitors. All good seeming by thy revolt, O husband, shall be thought put on for villainy, not born where it grows, but worn a bait for ladies. Okay, so I probably looked insane just then, and that is okay. So give yourself space to do this sort of thing, to be insane, because these high stakes monologues, we're asking a lot of ourselves to try and balance the naturalism of today with Shakespeare's heightened language. And when it's these really emotional monologues, it's when it's hardest to balance that stuff. So you need to go far into this by doing these kinds of things and seeing how it feels and how it sounds, to go, oh, you know, and maybe it does feel crazy, and that's okay. But actually, after I'd kind of done that, I felt, you might have seen it, I actually felt kind of relaxed. I think that there's a part of Shakespeare's characters that actually feel kind of relieved. They're speaking because they need to get this out of themselves. And I've talked about John Barton's Playing Shakespeare series before, and they talk about this in one of the videos, so I will link that one as well in here. So what I'm discovering here as I go through is that this is more than just I'm betrayed and I'm worthless. It's actually everything I thought about the world is wrong. I am wrong, and the world makes no sense. I think that's a really powerful way to connect to it. And I think that's what drives her to want to die, because she won't be able to navigate the world anymore. It's not possible for her to live the way that she knows how to live, which is with openness and kindness. She will not be able to trust anybody ever again. All right, so we found something here. Right, for this next section, I'm going to try and spit out, I'm going to overemphasize all the consonants, the hard consonants that get that sort of intensity behind them. I'm going to lean into them and overdo them. I recommend this as an exercise. If you ever come across a passage where there's a lot of that, see what happens when you really relish the sounds, and notice any other sounds that come up, because there are some other ones that I'm going to lean into, like weeping and lay the leaven. I want you to just notice how it changes the rhythm. And for me, I'm going to be noticing how it makes me feel. So that's what you can do as well when you have your own attempt at it. You're also going to see me doing this with my hand as I speak, and you might see that on my other videos. This is a kind of a voiceover thing, actually. It's something I've kind of picked up from doing voiceover and singing and that kind of thing. It's because what you do with your body affects your voice. So if I'm trying to get something really specific, I will actually make my hand very specific. So you can do that too if you find it helps you. It's also going to help me kind of get it into the body, so I'm not just going blah, 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 trying to make my consonants hard. Use your hand, because it will help you connect. True honest men being heard, like false Aeneas, were in his time thought false, and sinners weeping did scandal many a holy tear, took pity from most true wretchedness. So thou, Posthumus, wilt lay the leaven on all proper men. Goodly and gallant shall be false and perjured. Goodly and gallant shall be false and perjured from thy great fall. To finish off, I'm going to start from "Come, fellow, be thou honest," and I'm going to skip Bassanio's lines, and I'm going to speak through all of "Why I Must Die" as well. So it's going to be a huge section, and I'm just going to let rip now. Now that I've done that discovery, I'm going to work with the idea that that she wants to make sense of the world, but maybe if he kills her, then actually does make sense of the world, because he's supposed to do that. So she's in a state of confusion. Now, that's not an objective, and it's maybe not clear, but maybe by the time I speak through this, I will find the objective. So and I encourage you to do this sometimes as well, is just play it, lean into it, and find the objective later. Right, here we go. True, honest men being heard, like false Aeneas, were in his time thought false, and sinners weeping did scandal many a holy tear, took pity from most true wretchedness. So thou, Posthumus, wilt lay the leaven on all proper men. Goodly and gallant shall be false and perjured from thy great fall. Come, fellow, being thou honest, do thou thy master's bidding. When thou seest him, a little witness my obedience. Look, I draw the sword myself, take it, and hit the innocent mansion of my love, my heart. Fear not, 'tis empty of all things but grief. Thy master is not there, who was indeed the riches of it. Do his bidding, strike. Thou mayst be valiant in a better cause, but now thou seems a coward. Why, I must die, and if I do not by thy hand, thou art no servant of thy master's. Against self-slaughter there is a prohibition so divine that cravens my weak hand. Come, here's my heart. Something is afore it. Soft will no defence, obedient as the scabbard. What is here? The scriptures of the loyal Leonatus all turned to heresy. Away! Away, corrupters of my faith! You shall no more be stomachers to my heart. Thus may poor fools believe false teachers, though those that are betrayed do feel the treason sharply. Yet the traitor stands in worst case of woe. And thou, Posthumus, thou that didst set up my disobedience against the king my father, and make me put into contempt, the suits of princely fellows shall hereafter find it is no act of common passage, but a strain of rareness. And I grieve myself to think, when thou shalt be disedged by her that now thou tirest on, how thy memory will then be panged by me. Prithee, dispatch. The lamb entreats the butcher. Where's thy knife? Thou art too slow to do thy master's bidding when I desire it too. Still things to work on there. I hope it was helpful for you to see that, but I recommend get up on the floor and try these things. If you haven't yet, take a look at the video breakdown for this monologue, or otherwise maybe take a look at my movement video, because that can also help kind of put things into context, and it has a few more exercises that you might like to try. And that's it from me. See you next time.